This is Professor Charles Jeffries, Rainier Avenue Radio, and this is Professor Charles Jeffries, Seattle Central College, and I'm speaking at Rainier Radio, and today from the Aristotle Was a Plagiarist series. Okay, and so I'm gonna put my slide up. Oh, here we go. Okay, so what we're going to do, diversity. We're going to talk about diversity today. I mean, I hear all this news, affirmative action, everybody's saying, and all these Utah and some of the other states shutting down the diversity programs and all these issues. So what we're going to, and then we have Florida and Texas talking about anti-woke and all this issue. So I just want to talk about diversity, define what diversity means. Then we're going to actually look at a little of the history of diversity. In other words, why it came into play to begin with. And then we're going to talk about this anti-woke mentality. Really interesting. You think about what's the opposite of woke? You're woke. The opposite of woke is sleep. So if these people are anti-woke, what does that tell you they want you to buy into? And then we're going to analyze and look at the psychological implications. And then we're going to talk about Galton's myth. We kind of touched on it the last one. With this, we're going to deal with a little bit more in detail. But diversity, what does diversity mean? It's just inclusion of people of different races, cultures, and so forth. Okay, if you look in the dictionary or a synonym of diversity is variety. Variety. Okay, in other words, you go to one ice cream parlor, you have what? Just vanilla, and then you have, or maybe chocolate and vanilla. Oh, you go to another ice cream place, you have chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, orange, mango, all different flavors. Okay, that will be diversity. Okay, and it's really interesting. You think about what's going on here. Why can't and my whole point about diversity and the whole assumption is, why can't everybody have a seat at the table? Why do only one group of people get to call all the shots and have all the powers and make all the decisions, get all the representation? Why just one group of people get to do that? Okay, why can't everybody have a seat at the table? Okay, and also another issue around diversity training is all about teaching people how to get along with each other. Now, what's wrong with teaching people how to get along with each other? I'll repeat that. What's wrong with teaching people how to get along with each other? And this is what we're going to talk about. Last time we also talked about the Dunning-Kruger effect. In other words, stupid people tend to overestimate how smart they are, and intelligent people tend to underestimate how smart they are. Okay, but Galton's myth. We talked about Galton's myth before. Francis Galton was Charles Darwin's cousin. Okay, and he believed that the dumbest white person in the world is more intelligent than the smartest black person in the world. Okay, and that Galton's myth is to a certain extent the basis of what this anti-affirmative action, all anti-woke and all that's really all about. Let's talk about the value of diversity. I mean, Star Trek. Any people watch Star Trek, one of the coolest things about Star Trek, everybody had a seat at the table. You had blacks on the movie, you had Latinos on the movie, you had Native Americans on the movie, you had Asians on the movies, you had whites on the movie, you had all kinds of people, different peoples on that. You talk about Fast and Furious, the TV series Fast and Furious. Okay, they have everybody on there. You have blacks on there, you have Latinos on there, you have Native Americans on there, you have Asians on there. You know what I'm saying? You have some people, you don't know what they are on there. Okay, you have a variety of people on there. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? On the other hand, you look at Star Wars. I mean, Richard Pryor, after the first Star Wars came out, and said that was wishful thinking on the author's view of wishful thinking with no black people in the future, because you didn't see any black people in the first Star Wars when it came out. Okay, no black people in the future. And even in the most recent Star Wars, all the leaders, whether good or evil, were of European descent. Okay, versus Star Trek, Everybody had a seat at the table. Okay, but let's look at it a little bit closer. Why not? Why can't everybody have a seat? And look at another advantage of that. Let's talk about the Olympics. U.S. It won more medals than any other country. I think maybe all over 2,000, maybe 2,500 medals, 2,500 medals. China and India are at least has three times many people as the United States. I'll repeat that. China has over three times as many people as the United States. India has over three times as many people as the United States. Yet the U.S. puts out more medals because you see Americans in everything. You have Americans in fencing, you have Americans in track and field, you have Americans in wrestling, you have Americans doing almost all the sports, volleyball, you have everybody, because everybody's represented there. You have African Americans, you have everybody represented there. And that's one of the things that makes America great, if you want to use that term. Okay. Whereas you look at most countries, they're only competitive one or two events. In other words, Brazil. Okay, Brazil's best soccer ever, probably in the world, one of the top teams, but that's all the sport they have. Okay, other stars, you have other countries like that. They're really strong in maybe basketball, really strong in soccer, or really strong in badminton. But in the U.S., you have people from getting medals from all those different sports. So that's one of the beauties of diversity. Okay, Galton's myth, Francis Galton, I mentioned just a second ago. Okay, Francis Galton was basically the cousin of Darwin, and he said, and the assumption of Galton is, like I said, the most intelligent Black person is not as smart as the dumbest white person. And so this comes up with the whole idea behind anti-affirmative action. In other words, it's assumed that all people of color are less inherently inferior than these are people who are unqualified folks taking jobs from highly qualified whites. In other words, these unqualified people, just the fact that they're not from European descent, the assumption they're less qualified. Okay, and that was the whole idea of affirmative action. In other words, how is it possible that these people could get into this high institution? Well, they must have certain advantages. That's not really fair because we want all us in there. Okay, I mentioned before, one of the things about UC Berkeley, okay, it was what? 4 out of every 100 students when affirmative action was at a bet, and that was too many Black people. Or University of Washington, over 40,000, 45,000 students and 350 Blacks. That's too many Black people there. So the mentality was, well, these people don't deserve to be here because they don't have the genes or whatever is necessary to survive. I was also reading an article the other day where someone, at least now they'll have Blacks will have a higher graduation rate from these elite institutions. I said, wait a minute now, go back and look. You're talking about Georgetown, Stanford, Harvard, Yale, Dartmouth. They have a 94 to 97% graduation rate of those institutions for African American students. 94 to 97%. How much? What's the graduation rate for the white students at even your state institutions? Okay, so it's a myth. Okay, one of my former students, he teaches history at Richmond University in Virginia, and he kind of joked about it. He said that one of the things that affirmative action is over now, mediocre whites have no excuse for failing. I mean, just crazy. I had a student come to me quite a few years ago, and she said the reason she didn't get her college of choice was because of affirmative action. Come to find out later, she had a 1.8 grade point average and a 500 cumulative score for her SAT. In other words, 500 with both math and reading comprehension combined. She got 500. 2.1, you know what I'm saying? 1.8 GPA. I mean, that level. And he thought that she truly believed that she didn't get into her college because of affirmative action. It's really interesting because I remember even as an early age, I learned that the average racist white person would rather you punch him in the face, beat him and take his money, than beat him in the game of chess. And so when I was in Nashville, I used to hang out around the coffee shops in Vanderbilt and just crush them on the chessboard. Let's talk about the whole idea of, the dumbest white person in the world is more intelligent than the smartest Black person. Let's talk about Ted Cruz. If you ever watch Ted Cruz on the news or listen to some of the things he said, the guy's a certified idiot, but however, nobody questions whether or not he got into Harvard on his own merit. Okay, you think about that. Okay, so the assumption is basically stands in this guy's an idiot, yet people think he's smarter. Some of white people from West Virginia, Alabama, Mississippi are among the dumbest people in America. Go back to Emily Badger's article in the New York Times I mentioned last time. Okay, and we even talk about Lewis Terman found that blacks in the North scored higher than whites in the South on all these standardized tests. Okay, and so you think about that, the assumptions and anti-woke. What is anti-woke? Anti-woke, what is it? It's ideas that glorify, right, promote a history that glorifies whiteness and puts everybody else as others, or they don't even exist. Okay, and for me, the real issue goes back to Professor Hayter once mentioned, there's a difference between history and mythology. So in other words, in those governors and the politicians in Texas and Florida, it seems like they want mythology instead of history. Okay, and why is this where's the basic assumptions you're anti-woke coming from? It goes back to this where back when we talked about before or early in the mid 1800s, is it used Darwin's theory to justify slavery and also the wiping out of the people. These aren't real humans because the Europeans are the highest on the evolutionary scale. Okay, so therefore it's okay to mess over these people. And then the church contributed the curse of Ham, the myth of Ham. Okay, as far as black folks are concerned, they're cursed to be servants throughout eternity. Okay, and that assumption. And then the scholars, if you look at a lot of your textbooks, they omit other people's contributions, whether Latinos contributions, Native American contributions, Asian. They omit a lot of them. So what we call history are basically a lot of omissions. Okay, or riddled with omissions. And that was the whole idea of I guess diversity to a certain. Let's look at how everybody contributed to society. Why is it that Europeans are the only ones who make all the inventions? Europeans do all the important things. Like, what about other people? And also, it makes students of that nationality more interested. Oh, wow, dude's a Latino like me, and he talked about his contribution, or so and so's African American or Native American. They talk about how important. I mean, that makes them more engaged in the class. Okay, versus repeating boring statements that may or may not be true. Over the Ocean Blue, 1492, and those type of issues. Okay, Galton, they were interesting about Galton and Darwin and Herbert Spencer, this first Spencer one that came up with social Darwinism, is that they've never had a conversation with a black person. Never had a conversation with, never sat down and talked to a black person, never met a black person. Yet they were experts on human behavior. And they were experts on how people were supposed to be in life. And this people still buy into it. People from Florida and Texas still buy into that idea. These people are less than everybody else. So they're not relevant enough to talk about them in history. Black history in Florida is banned, okay, because it's what those people contributions are not important. Okay. And think about they are basically experts on things they know nothing about. Galton, Spencer, G. Stanley Hall, those folks claim themselves to be experts on issues that they knew nothing about. And that's where there's some of Dunning-Kruger effect on European Americans or Europeans in general. We're talking about how stupid people tend to overestimate how smart they are. You have Galton and Spencer, and those guys thinking we're the best thing that ever happened in the world. We all the contributions and nobody else was important, and so therefore we don't want to talk about them. As you talk about them, we're going to ban the books and those type of issues. And so you think about in terms of what's going on here, and the thing about it is immigrants also become an issue. A lot of times, I'm talking legal immigrants. As soon as they get their American citizenship, they become white. I'm not saying all of them, but a lot of your legal immigrants, as soon as they get American citizenship, they identify themselves as white. They send their kids to white schools. They hang out their children with white children. Oftentimes they go and just blend, try to assimilate into the white world. Some of them, example of some of these folks I'm going to talk about today: Vivek Ramaswamy, Edward Blum, Alan Bakke, and Carrie Lake. But first, I want to make an announcement. with this tomorrow. Okay, tomorrow at 6 o'clock, the city council is going to be a debate for the city council. Okay, Seattle City Council, and then there's also a debate in Washington State Attorney at 7 p.m. on Thursday, and then you have another debate September 26th, Washington OSPI. Okay, and that's at 7 o'clock. So I'll repeat that. Okay, the city council has their debate on tomorrow. Okay, Washington Attorney General, they have their debate on Thursday, and the OSPI debate is on the 26th, and so that's at 7 o'clock. But anyway, back to where we. It's really important also to attend these debates. A lot of times, especially a lot of times, you don't know about these lesser, or in other words, most people just vote in the big in terms of the president. But then we're talking about the local elections are as important. I'll say your local elections are as important as your others, because you got people like the Riker running versus Ferguson. If your teacher, is really important to know where these people stand, as I am, and so forth. So now I want to go back to how do I get? Oh, okay. So let's look at these individuals here. I mean, these are people. Vivek Ramaswamy. I'm sure you've seen him on television. He ran president. He ran for the president on the Republican ticket. And one of the things that really fascinates me is I've never heard him say anything nice about black people. I've never heard him say anything nice about black people. And the crazy thing about that guy's darker than me. I mean, he's darker than the average black person. You put in a room full of black people and put American clothes on him, you couldn't pick him out. You couldn't pick out of the crowd. Yet he's saying some really hateful things about African Americans during this political campaign. One of the interesting things about it is Ann Coulter put him in his place. It was I guess a podcast or interview with Ann Coulter, and she said, "I'll never vote for you because you're not white." In so many words, she said, "I'll never vote for you because you're not white." And really, I have to admit, Ramaswamy had those composure, but I kind of wonder what he was thinking about. But it's amazing. This guy is hateful in terms of what he says and some of the things he said about African Americans. Okay, you think about India. Okay, I mean, India is not as without any problems. Okay, you think about in terms of India has some of the most beautiful women in the world, and they treat them like dirt. I mean, India is the only place you can go in the world where a woman can get raped on public transportation and nobody goes to jail for it, especially if the girl's from a poor family. Okay, this is just incidents of some of the incidents that happens. The whole idea is coming there. Okay, you think about this. This is another case. Okay, it's a Spanish tourist came to India just to go camping. Okay, and a 13-year-old girl. So this is all over. And you have another Indian American, Carrie Lake. Once again, I've never heard her say anything nice about black people. Okay, she refused to stand the black national anthem in the football game. Okay, very contemptuous towards black people. Once again, she's darker than the majority of black people I know. If you, like I said, you put her in a room full of black people, I bet you couldn't pick her out of the crowd. Okay, Nikki Haley, same thing. Okay, she's talking about being a little brown girl, but she never experienced racism. Parents never had to talk to her about racism. But you think about her father taught at a black college. Nikki Haley's father was a professor at a black college, and then she comes around and says it's no racism. Really, a lot of people don't realize that before World War II, a lot of Japanese and Chinese Americans and East Indian Americans went to black colleges. I'll repeat that. Before World War II, I say in the 1930s and 1940s and earlier, a lot of your Chinese and Japanese went to predominantly black college because they couldn't get into white colleges. They couldn't get into all these white colleges. Didn't admit Asians, okay, or any other folks like. So they went to historically black colleges, but nobody talks about that. Okay, and then we got Edward Blum. It's a really interesting individual. You think about where he's coming from. I mean, he's led the charge basically on affirmative action. Okay, I think about what's his motive? I mean, we're talking about why is it that why should black people, they believe black people shouldn't have gotten in these institutions? I mean, his whole move to push black people out of academia. Okay, and certainly it may or may not be devastating. Okay, the whole idea, well, these are too many black people. We're talking about affirmative action in the uh, previous video, Aristotle the Plagiarist 5. But someone to say, well, there's too many folks in this, and 10% or whatever, so there's too many in there, and we're going to push them out. And I wonder about that. Blum is a Jewish American. Okay, and Jews have gotten into a lot of the same similar issues back in history. That's what the Passover is all about. That at least African Americans have. Okay, this individual basically set a series of legal situations where now black girls can't get scholarships. Okay, not only we don't want these people in college, we don't want these people to have any type of opportunity. And they're going to at some point have to redefine anti-Semitism. We're talking about wiping people out. Yes, that's wrong. But when you criticize somebody for doing something that's true, okay, just because you didn't want to hear it, but it's true, then that's a whole different story. Okay, Whoopi Goldberg came on The View, and she said that she saw Jews as white people. The next day, they threatened to take away her job because she said she was anti-Semitic. She was telling the truth. Okay, she was telling the truth. Most Jews, at least the ones I know personally, identify themselves as white. So that's where it's talking about if you call that anti-Semitism, then that term is going to lose its sting. It's one thing talking about wiping people out. It's another thing to criticize them, especially when they're wrong. And that goes back to Bakke. And proof of what Whoopi Goldberg was saying is that Bakke sued the University of California, Davis, because he believed he was turned down because he was white, not because he was Jewish. And that really puzzles me, because I say we never put Jews in any concentration camps. We never made lampshades out of their skins. We never made ashtrays out of their skulls or gas masks. We never did any of those things to Jews. But yet these individuals, I'm not putting a whole group of religion, I'm talking about these particular individuals doing way more devastating things than anything black people had done to them. And the irony is they're supporting the white supremacists. So Bakke and Blum both are these legislatures put these to benefit the people who put them in the concentration camps. You say, wow, what's that really all about? Let's talk about inferiority. That goes back to the Galton's myth. Okay, that basically accepted that African Americans are stupid, Latino Americans are smart, and all of them are poor and criminally inclined. That's basically the association in all the media. You think about it in the media, middle class blacks are invisible. You don't see very many shows of middle-class blacks who are professors, blacks who are lawyers or doctors. You see a few out there, but you see the majority of the characters are clowns or buffoons or criminals or just kind of, well, I don't know about this individual. And the problem is these images, the media, and from the textbooks even, create a mentality where a lot of kids grow up to hate themselves. Kind of we're talking about Clarence Thomas is coming from. Okay, growing up to hate themselves. Okay. And Carter Woodson talked about that in his book, Miseducation of the Negro. The problem of the Negro holding down is easily solved. In other words, you make that person feel inferior. You teach him in school that he's not going to have ever amount, and you give the counselors and advisors tell him you're no use applying to this college. Okay, you tell these people, and then they don't aspire, they don't believe they can learn, and then teach them to hate themselves. Look at all the images you put in there. But the key, what's really important is that education. Blum and Bakke, their attempt was to prevent these individuals from excelling or even getting into higher education, because higher education basically is a main tool in order to uplift or maintain a particular style of living. And so that's the whole purpose, to keep these people down. And how do we keep these people down? Well, we basically we keep them down by basically keeping them out of the educational system, keep them ignorant. Okay, and then we feed them information. Okay, and those type of issues. I mean, at first, when I heard about the anti-affirmative action ruling coming down, I was kind of upset. But then now seeing the figures, hey, Yale still has 14%, Princeton still has 14% African American, Harvard went down to 6%, maybe depending on who you listen to, maybe they